Alrighty, thanks everyone. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm here to talk to you about fleeting, ephemeral UIs and immortal permanent data. But before we do that and before we jump right in, let's perhaps recap a little bit. Okay, so in February, Elon announced that it was going to suspend the free access to the API, and everyone lost their minds, right? Immediately was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? He also just gave a couple of days before this was actually going to take place. And then it was 45 days of silence until finally Twitter actually announced the official policy. There would still be a free tier to access the API, but very limited. And the one for power users, that would cost a whopping like 40K per month, which is like outrageous. And so everyone lost their minds again, and it was like insane. But you know, it's Elon, so he can do pretty much whatever he wants, and he gets this through. And so that's where it ended, right? Well, wrong. Because other took a page out of the book of Elon, and then Reddit did the same thing, this time ending their free access to the API, which they had, was a staple of Reddit since 2008. And again, people were like pretty upset about this because it really put in danger the thriving third-party app ecosystem that was built on top of Reddit, right? So darlings of Reddit like Apollo or Reddit is Fun basically said, hey, if you start charging us, we cannot run our business. We're going to have to go dark. And so all of Reddit also decided to go black or dark. 8,000 subs decided to restrict the access and become private. And, fun stuff started happening, like posting pictures of John Oliver and tagging stuff as not suitable for work so that subreddits couldn't be monetized, and so on and so forth. But in the end, last Saturday, they actually implemented the charges and the new fee structure, and they basically just like steamrolled the entire thing, right? Okay, and you thought, well, that was that. Well, the same day, on a Saturday, Elon dropped another bombshell, and they decided to actually basically paywall Twitter, right? So now non-blue checkmark users could read 600 tweets, and the paying users could read 6,000 tweets. All right, well, this also upset everyone. It's not great. The justification that he gave for that was that these evil LLMs were aggressively data scraping the website in response to the hike on prices of the access to the APIs. And so what ensued was also just a little bit of chaos. But in the end, this is what ended up happening, and that's what we're living in right now. Everyone started speculating, why did he actually do this? Was it because of the LLMs? Or perhaps, as others have pointed out, is it because he didn't want to pay the Google Cloud bill that has been outstanding? It's like 300 million per month or so. Also, some others noticed that the contract that they had with Google Cloud had expired on June 30th, so there was a lot of speculation abounding. A lot of speculation also happened to, okay, well, where do we go next? Now that sort of like Reddit is kind of dark, Twitter increasingly sucks for many users, what is going to happen next, right? And that's, I guess, what we're all also sort of like wondering now. Well, you could think maybe you go to an open source alternative like Mastodon, which started in 2016, and actually gained a lot of traction on the eve of the announcement by Elon Musk, right? So normally they had signups every hour that were like double digits, and this increased to thousands on the eve of the announcement, which is like pretty significant. Maybe for those of you who are familiar in Web3, and I imagine that a lot of you are, you can also use Lens protocol, or maybe you just want to like wait until they finally release Blue Sky when they're done with the AD protocol sometime, or maybe you just wait until tomorrow when reportedly Instagram Threads is going to launch. Let's see if that actually happens. Or maybe what can also happen is that social interactions will move to basically end-to-end encrypted private chats, which makes it really, really difficult for LLMs to go there and retrieve data to actually have like training sets, right? Okay, well, that all can happen. It's kind of puzzling. We don't really know what's going on. And I guess that's the main question that we have here, like what's happening and what is going to happen next? Where is it all headed? Let's start with the first part of the question. What's happening? Like simply put, I think that AI startups are threatening the business models of incumbent platforms. Normally, they have a very UI-centric approach to things. So remember that the UIs are specifically designed to increase engagement from the users that they have with free user-generated content. That's sort of like the name of the game. But the second part of this is also to get the users to generate more of that content for free. so that others can consume it, and this goes on in a very profitable way for these platforms, who then, of course, don't share this data with anyone else outside of their own silos. So you cannot really operate the data there. You cannot take your profile from one place to another. They really want to keep you there. What happens then is that you have sort of like this silo approach, which goes two ways. You have, on the one hand, the UI is making or extracting the information that it can. They keep the data in silos, and then they play it back to you on the same UI. Not a different UI, the same UI. And this is where I guess AI startups are starting to disrupt and really threaten the position that they have. Because what they're doing is they're taking the data and they're not playing it back on the user interfaces where it originates. Why would they, right? So what they do is they just like recompile it, they put it somewhere else, and they display it to you in the way that you want. And so this is super threatening to the business model that they had. So where is it all headed? Well, first of all, I think that the user interfaces, and that's why the first part of the title of this presentation is called Fleeting UIs. It's not going to be like a UI that is very static, that stays the same forever and ever. What's going to happen is you're simply going to be able to retrieve the data from different data silos, as long as they let you, and then they're going to like recompile it and present it in whichever way you want, and whichever way the data also allows you to do this, right? And then you're going to have like fleeting personalized UIs that basically say something like, I don't know, show me Twitter data in a table ranked by sentiment, right? And it's like a new way of presenting it to you. That's your version of it. That's what you want. Or maybe you say, hey, present this content from Wikipedia in a TikTok way. Okay, maybe they can also do that. In the end, what you're going to be moving towards, once you don't have this sort of like UI-centric and UI-static-centric approach, is you're going to be relying more and more on the data, right? And why would you have LLMs really thrive on large amounts of data, and they're going to be looking for it in the most cheap and abundant way possible. So these things, these repositories, are also going to start being forced more and more to share that data and monetize that data. But you're not going to have, it doesn't make sense really, to have eventually like open data repositories that are siloed. Why would you? What you really want is one single open data lake, right? Okay, so but why does it happen? What do we need for that? Remember this sort of like thing here, this model, how it actually works? Well, just shifting away from the UI static or static UI centric model doesn't only mean that the interface changes, but also the business model that they have. Remember that it becomes increasingly hard to harvest free user-generated content if you don't have like an optimized UI for that approach, right? And why would you? Because you want it to display the way that you want, not the way that they want in order to capture your information. So you need a different type of monetization. You need a different type of sort of incentive structure. And this is where you are reliant at incentivized data contribution. And for those of you who have been in Web3 for a long time, you know that this is like the panacea, right? Like everyone wants to talk about this. There's been like really laudable and really cool attempts at getting this done. So, projects like Steemit actually help you, reward you as a user for moderation and contribution that you do to the content that they offer. But it hasn't really taken off. And I think that, or the way that we think about it at Forward Research is because it has been still relatively platform specific. So what you actually want, thinking about it like taking a step back, you want a scheme by which any type of data that you store to this open data lake can generate a royalty for you. So if someone starts using your like or starts using your post, that you actually get a royalty from it and you extract some value from it as well. Okay, cool. How do you actually do this? Are you going to enforce it by code? It's going to be super difficult to do that. So you go back to something that is like really sort of like real world, old school thing, but actually works, which is you go to a data license. And this is what we've been working on pretty hard over the last couple of months at Forward Research. We released it last week. It's called the Universal Data License. And what it allows you to do is programmatically add a tag to any sort of information that you store to an open data lake. And with this, you specify the royalties, the type of permissions that you have for the use case, and you can port this anywhere that you want, right? So you don't care if you store it on this open data lake, you don't care if it's being played back on TikTok or if it's being played back by an AI startup, because you still get a revenue or a royalty if there is some sort of like commercial use. And you can also define, hey, I don't want you to use my private pictures, and that should also be respected. It's also legally enforceable. We made sure of that. Okay, cool. So now you have these different parts, right? You have the fleeting UI, you have the incentive structure, and you have the licensing tooling for it. So let's talk about the last bit here. This already mentioned. The last bit that you have is talking about the open data lake. And think about it for a second, right? When you're trying to maximize the royalties that the data that you're contributing give to you, while minimizing the overhead of managing the licensing regime and also managing the storage of your data, you don't want something that you have to do recurring payments or manage the things. You want something that is pretty much immutable. And for that, you would store it on Arweave, which is a permanent decentralized data storage network, which allows you to pay once and store forever any type of information. So you can store, I don't know, your NFTs, music, UIs, fully fledged applications. For a single payment, you don't have to worry about it anymore. And the best of all is you can add these tags from the Universal Data License, and then it can be used widely because by default, anything stored on Arweave is stored in an open manner. So anyone can come and actually use it. I think that if you then have the fleeting UIs, the incentive screen is in the incentive layer, the license, and then you have the open data lake all together, then you come to a composable web. And that's what we're trying to build here. So if you're interested, reach out to us or DM on Twitter while you still can. Thank you.